When the invitation first arrived, I thought it was a sign of acceptance. For years, I had been kept at a distance from certain relatives who never quite saw me as part of the family. My successes were overlooked, my presence tolerated rather than embraced. Yet, when I was invited to the wedding of a cousin I had grown up with, I allowed myself to believe that maybe things had changed. I bought a suit that fit perfectly, arranged time away from work, and prepared myself to celebrate love and family. What I didn't know then was that the event would not be about joy, but about a quiet act of humiliation that revealed just how little some people still valued me. The venue was grand, a sprawling hall filled with white roses, shimmering lights, and long tables arranged with precision. Guests laughed and mingled, dressed in their finest. At first glance, it looked like a scene from a fairy tale. But as I entered and searched for my seat, I noticed the way some eyes flickered toward me, not with warmth but with a subtle disdain I had known all my life. A relative handed me my seating card with a forced smile, and I followed the directions written on it. Row after row I walked, past relatives who had been seated near the front, until I reached the farthest table, tucked away near the back, so far from the ceremony that I could barely see the altar. My table was surrounded not by close relatives, but by distant acquaintances, people who barely knew me. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. As I sat there, the music swelling for the bridal entrance, I felt a familiar ache settle in my chest. It wasn't just about a chair at the back of the hall. It was about what that chair represented. To them, I was less worthy of visibility, less deserving of respect, less a part of the family that I had sacrificed and worked for. My skin color, my background, my very identity had become the excuse they used to push me aside, to remind me that I didn't belong in their version of perfection. I could feel my face burning, not from shame of who I was, but from the sting of how openly they dismissed me in front of everyone. But what they didn't know was that outside those walls, beyond their shallow hierarchy of status and prejudice, I had built a life that commanded respect. While they whispered behind my back, I had poured every ounce of myself into creating something remarkable. From nothing, I had built a thriving hotel business, one that had become known for its excellence in service. My staff weren't just employees. They were a family forged through hard work and loyalty. And that day, while I sat quietly at the back of the hall, some of them were on their way to deliver something I had forgotten in the rush of preparation. It began with a ripple of movement at the entrance. Several of my hotel staff, dressed in crisp uniforms bearing the logo of my establishment, walked in with calm professionalism. They weren't loud or disruptive. They carried themselves with dignity. But their presence was impossible to ignore. Heads turned, conversations faltered. They approached me, each one offering a respectful nod. Their eyes filled with the kind of regard I never received from the people at the front. One of them handed me a small package I had left behind at work, another discreetly asked if I needed anything else, and all of them addressed me with a tone that made it clear where their respect lay. The hall grew quiet as people realized what was happening. For those who had seated me in the back, believing it would diminish me, the scene became a mirror reflecting their own pettiness. They had tried to make me invisible, yet here was undeniable proof of my place in the world. Proof that respect was not given by bloodline or seating arrangements, but earned through resilience and integrity. My staff's arrival wasn't planned as a spectacle, but it became one. It showed, without a word spoken, that I was a person of value, someone whose presence commanded loyalty and honor. I didn't gloat. I didn't rise from my seat or demand attention. I simply sat a little taller, allowed the truth of the moment to sink into the room. The same relatives who had placed me at the margins now shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, their eyes darting away, ashamed though they would never admit it aloud. The bride and groom carried on, but the air had shifted. What was meant to be a quiet humiliation had turned into a public revelation. The ceremony concluded, and dinner was served. I noticed the way some family members tried to make small talk with me afterward, their tone suddenly softer, more careful. But I no longer needed their approval. That day,